Hi there, welcome to today's video. A big canvas on the go here. It's a 1 metre square canvas, and I thought I'd do this painting of North Cornwall, Bedruthan Steps. I used a burnt sienna ground colour, which I painted on with oil paint. I used to use it a lot for ground colours. And that's the view we are painting today. And I've already been up there to do some plein air painting, so I've got a good feel for the subject, and I wanted to do a big canvas for my exhibition. And I just really like this scene and love the green colour of the sea. Here I'm just mapping in the sort of drawing in with a brush loosely the main shapes, just trying to simplify it down to sort of very simple shapes and just get them in a sort of roughly in position, using a photograph for reference, which is on my sort of a tablet sort of in the corner. So you can see there that I just sort of squared that scene off. This is like a burnt umber and an ultramarine blue, so just get a fairly dark colour, which I'm just using to draw with a round brush, long handled round brush. And I've got a bit of sort of terps mixed in with the paint, so it just flows a little bit easier. A lot of brushes to choose from, as you can see. Half of them don't get used, but can never have enough brushes. And there's my mediums and bits and pieces that are all there. They all have a use, and they've got a warm white, lemon yellow, cadmium yellow, Naples yellow there, cadmium red, or a magenta. That is the Indian red, burnt sienna, raw sienna, burnt umber today, violet, ultramarine blue, and we've got this phthalo blue titanium white mix, but Michael Harding does to replace the manganese blue. And there, this is where I was painting up there, and you can see the video of this. I'll put a link up in the top right hand corner if you want to go and have a look. Yeah, great scene. So I like to mix these Naples yellow with the violet and some white, so get like the greyish type colour, like a warm grey. And I tend to use that for this scene anyway, in the sky. So now starting this that process of blocking in with, you know, reasonable size brush, not a very big brush. I don't really use big brushes. I like the marks the smaller brushes make. People often ask me why I use such small brushes, but it's just, if I used a bigger brush, I wouldn't get the same marks. And a bit of blue now, a bit of ultramarine blue, just to make it a little bit greyer and bluer for that lower part of the sky. I'm brushing in there. I don't mind sort of going over the lines I've drawn in. That's not too important at this stage. Let's just see the marks. I'm making her just nice and sort of rough and loose. I'm not sort of painting in a horizontal sort of band. I like these. I need to have these brush marks in at this stage. It sort of gives it a bit of life. I'd get very bored, I think, if I was sweeping the brush across from side to side here and having a very flat sky, which is not what I want. And it's just a case, this is like I think this is a filbert I'm using here, long handled filbert. And the idea after this sort of day one of the painting is to have all this blocked in, all these sort of sections, so the sky, the sea and the land sort of blocked in, get some paint on there, and then it can have a chance to dry, ready for the next layer. And you're sort of painting quite loosely like this. You want to hold the brush fairly close to the end of the handle, so help you get some looser marks. Now we're introducing this Pthalo blue with some raw sienna, just to give us a sort of a base colour for this sea, something to work on. Basil's snoozing again on the sofa. So again, this would be a filbert or a flat. This looks like a flat here, which I'm using. So there's no, not using it like to get the flat marks that you can get with these flat brushes. I'm just using it for blocking in. A bit of titanium buff white added onto the palette there, just to sort of use instead of the white. In the foreground here I wanted something a little bit warmer, so I've got Naples yellow mixed in with a little bit of cadmium red there, just to introduce a bit of warmth into that foreground area. That area there you can see, which was precariously close to the edge of the cliffs when we were painting up there recently in the summer. Just getting a few darker areas in for the rocks with like a burnt umber and ultramarine or violet. There's some violet going in there, almost matches my shirt look. What's the chances of that? Some textures, just some close-ups just to show you some of the textures that have gone on after the initial block in. This is after the first session. And we clean the palette off after that, and I'm ready for session 2 now. Second layer of paints. This has had a week or so to dry. I've even changed my shirt look and had a haircut. Now I'm just painting in some of the, gone back into the sky, painting in some clouds that are hovering above. That's quite a grey sky, this one, but there's just some lighter areas of clouds. And I just wanted to make the sky a little bit more interesting without detracting too much from the main scene, which was the rocks and the sea. Mr. Grumpy painting away. Again, this is a filbert I'm using here. And sometimes I'll hold the brush slightly further down the handle if I want a little bit more control. But I'm not holding it like you would hold a pencil or anything. Nice grey there, you see, with yellow, blue and violet and white. Smaller brush now, again a filbert, just to sort of develop some of the cloud shapes a little bit more, and some highlights here and there. The smaller brush, again holding the brush right towards the end, so the marks are not too contrived. They are fairly loose still, but I've got a bit of control, and that's the scene we're looking at. And the canvas is obviously fairly flexible. It's got quite a nice tooth, although I use canvases on a bigger scale like this because they are lighter to carry around compared to plywood, which can get quite heavy at this size. There's the manganese blue which I've added in now to the palettes. Just found that the phthalo blue wasn't really getting some of the colours I needed, especially in the distance there, which I'm painting in now. And as I come further down towards the foreground, the colours get more intense. Got some lemon yellow added into this mix now. That's a phthalo blue, raw sienna and lemon yellow mix. And we're just still stroking on these marks. The idea is to let the underpainting come through in places. So you put new layers of paint on the top, but you're not obliterating everything you've already done up to that point, or else it would be pointless working like this if you're going to just cover everything up. The idea is to sort of build up the layers and let previous layers come through and little gaps that you've missed. So that's the end of that session. Now leave that to dry again now for a week or two, and clean the brushes, and ready for a new day now. Somebody's happy snoozing on the sofa. Now we're sort of painting in this distant land, which is in the distance there. Just getting this right mixture of sort of a round or a small filbert and this rigger brush I'm using. A little bit more care taken here just to get those areas how I want them. And there's a nice orange streak which runs through that rock where the sun is catching it a little bit, and I wanted to just get that in place quite strong at this point. And I can always subdue it a little bit more later, knock it back more with some greys on the top if needed. So it's a mixed case of just sort of working on the land a bit more now to build this up. This took quite a bit of time because there's lots of different tones and colours in there, as opposed to the sea, which was a large sort of flatter area. I realised I'd made a bit of a mistake with the drawing side of it. So beauty of oils, you can paint over and repaint areas very easily. So I've raised that up a little bit, as you can see there at the back. And some darks, again, it's like a burnt umber ultramarine blue mix for the darks. And I just needed to get those in place so then I can work back towards the mid-tones and lighter areas in amongst the rocks. I usually always start with mid-tones when I'm doing an underpainting, and I like to go in for the darks and the lights when I feel like the mid-tones are sort of a good base to work from. Again, see, mixing up some greys, using those three colours again, so Naples yellow or raw sienna and violet with some white, and that can go in among the rocks and the water. And we're using a round brush here. It's not too important what sort of brush, as long as it's just like the right size. And it's just a case of, yeah, putting some different greens and ochres in there to build up these rocks and cliffs. It's quite a time consuming part of the painting. Just need to study that reference photo as much as possible as you're going along and building up over time, really. So I like that mix quite a lot, don't I? By the looks of it, that goes in to a lot of places, that Naples yellow, violet and white. So putting these greys in, which might not be too obvious in that photo, but they are there, and then I can sort of work into them. Just to sort of, basically, I'm just developing these shapes where the cliffs go in and out. Yes, Basil. And see what I'm doing, I'm working on all of the painting as I go, rather than sort of finishing one area off. I'm trying to sort of build it up together, if that makes sense, rather than sort of like piecing it together like a jigsaw puzzle where you finish one area and then move on to the next, finish that and piece things together like that. I like to work on that as a whole. And that's where we're at the moment. And he's still asleep. See, we've built that up now. And we're in for another session. It's coming on quite nicely now. We've got a fairly wide filbert there. There's the manganese blue on the right. This is where we start to. We've done enough on the rocks at the moment, for the cliffs for this stage. Now I'm just going to start just correcting some areas where the water meets the base of the cliffs and get the shapes right, and obviously adding more colour here and there with broken marks into the sea. There's some various grey greens I've made. And see, I'm just adding a few sort of lighter areas in as well as darker ones into the water. So just constantly building it up all the time. Just really just trying to get some movement in there. And you can see with this sort of there the paint's going on, and as you add more layers it gets a little bit thicker each time. And I thought here, I think it was time to get some of the surf in, just as sort of basic shapes. Get this in place and then I can work around that then. And again, you see I'm using the sort of an opaque, if I want to cover, I'm using an opaque warm white mixed with like lemon yellow or a violet in there. And I've got rigor as well here. I've gone back into the cliffs again now for some of the smaller marks. Just refining areas now and correcting shapes. And then we switch brushes to this old round brush I've got, and putting some deeper greens in, especially in the foreground.
Just sort of edging up now around there, but by bringing the sea edging up, so painting this sort of some of the sea and it's the same colours sometimes in the rocks and the sea. Now we're going to have a look at that little track at the top there. Just get this in place. This is basically it's like a little map. Then you can follow it as you go. You've got some great covering power with the oil paint, you see. Some more darks going in now. I've got some painting medium, which is a stand oil and terps mix, which I do add in now and again to the paint. So this is another session now. I've changed my shirt again, and we just sort of just now we're sort of refining areas and just altering colours a little bit here and there, because the paint underneath is dry. We can sort of scumble across the top. So it's sort of it's a way of mixing sort of colours with a dry brush technique, and the texture of the canvas allows the underpainting to come through because you're brushing onto the top basically where the weave is at its highest point. And that's where we're at the moment. So it's coming together now, and we're back in again for another session to sort of start to finish things off and add a bit of Prussian blue onto the palette, which is colour I don't use very often, but I thought it needed it for some areas. And we've got 4 blues out there now. Now we sort of slow down. We start to slow down a bit and really study the reference material we're using, and sort of hone in on little areas now. Trying to keep the marks loose and sort of keep the painting looking a bit sort of fresh and have some movement rather than sort of like a stiff, boring copy of the photograph. And we're back in for another session now. I don't know quite how many I did, but obviously I've gone back to the Mr. Grumpy shirt here to probably add in finishing touches by the looks of it here. Or developing. So yeah, the foreground was undeveloped at this point, so obviously I thought I could work on this, even though the rest of the painting was probably wet from the day before. This part of the painting hasn't been worked on for a little while and is quite dry, so I could work straight into it now. This was filmed over many sessions actually, not just sort of like 5 days. And this is a palette for the foreground. It's quite a difficult area to paint, this was, because it's got many colours in there, and I didn't want it to become too detailed. Still wanted it to sort of keep the looseness. So you just, with the rigger, we can randomly put in some of these plants and things that were in the foreground without going too far and too mad. And you don't want to have them everywhere. we're just hinting at them with this sort of nice sort of peachy pink colour. And where where the plants are more grouped together, we can use a bigger brush then to put the same colour sweeping across to show that they're sort of grouped together. And that's the variety of brushes I've been using. So this is a flat, and we just sort of just basically mixing wet into wet here to build up these sort of greens and ochres and sort of orangey pinks in the foreground. The orange will contrast quite nicely with any blues in the dark of the rock there. And that's the texture after that session painting the foreground. Now we're going to go and we're painting in this the surf using the long-handled rigger brush. We're just going into the distant areas now, just quite carefully stroking on these areas, sort of tinted whites they are. So they're quite fairly bright in places, and then I will grey them off in other places. These often bring the painting to life, but it's very easy to sort of overdo them. And we have got to this stage now where we're virtually at the finishing touches stage. So we just a lot of sort of slow down, a bit more care required. We're just putting a few darker areas in on the water there amongst the surf. And we can use the brush there in a random way as well. I want some more random marks. Just getting a few shapes into the water there. And there's a shadow cast by that large sort of rock. And I wanted some deeper areas of colour into the water. And we're just developing again. You see where I'm brushing on with the side of the brush and letting the underpainting come through. And there's some greys going on now. So it's just about refining what we've already got. We've got the basis of the painting in place, which I really like at this stage. So it's just refining areas now. And not using the reference material too much now. We're still glancing down at it. You can see me glancing at it every so often. Look. But we are using it to help us, but we're also looking to see what the painting needs and where I want to take it. Isn't that right, Basil? So this is more of a wet in wet scumbling onto wet paint there in places and dry paint in others. So we're sort of mixing the colours on the canvas in a very loose way to create the movement. And always a nice cup of tea helps when you want a little look at where it's at, review the scene. And a close look, and then I'll look at it again as well from a distance to see if it's working as a whole. Now we're using some quite fairly thick, opaque white mixes just to make these nice and bright and opaque so they stand out where I want the surf to be at its brightest. And again, I find the Rigger's quite a nice brush for that. There we can drag that across and mix in with any wet paint as well. So it mixes with the wet paint underneath where you want it to, or it sits on the top of it because it's opaque. So I'm constantly glancing at the photograph just to help me with this surf, to sort of keep the direction and shape that I want to keep. You see what I'm trying to achieve there, some of those shapes in the surf as they're sort of coming in on the waves. And a few sort of sparkly areas without overdoing it. It's very easy to put these sparkly effects everywhere, and that's just not what I want. And I can multitask up to a point. I can drink tea while I'm painting, believe it or not. And you can see the tablet that I'm using from a reference material, just resting on that table easel there to the right of the canvas. Beauty of that is you can enlarge areas rather than using a photograph, which is you can't enlarge really, can you? I think we're nearly there now. We're just sort of just refining these edges around the rocks and things to bring them out and get the brightness into the surf where it's needed to give it a bit of life and spark. The more you look, the more you see. So eventually you've got to sort of decide it's finished and call it a day. And you just go on forever. And there was a little rock which I decided to include there on the right hand side in the foreground. I thought that would make a nice little area in the water to sort of show where that surf is breaking up, where the rock is. And I think that might be it. I think I might have gone as far as I can with that one. And there's the textures in the paint. You can see the marks, all the mark making, and the textures built up over several sessions of working, letting each one dry in between. And the texture there is the paint built up over time. And you can see the shiny paint is where it's still quite wet. And that's what it looks like. Moved it outside into the corridor so we could have a proper look at it from a distance. And just, make sure it's working as a whole. And I thought, I'll sign it. Sometimes I forget, and then I'm just about to frame them and take them off the gallery and realise it hasn't been signed. So this one I thought, I'll sign it straight away, so I don't forget. So obviously, being a bigger painting, needed a little bit longer to frame, and that's it. That's the finished painting, signed and ready for framing, and then off to exhibition in Polzeath at Whitewater Contemporary. And there it is on the wall during the exhibition, which is on until the end of October. And in the gallery catalogue. Oh, that's me. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that one. Basil enjoyed his snooze. Thanks for watching again, and bye for now.